History of Ancient Rome. Chapter 1. The Birth of Rome and Early Culture, 8th to 6th centuries BCE. The origins of Rome are an intricate blend of myth, archaeology, and early socio-political development. Nestled among the 7 hills along the Tiber River, Rome's location was ideal for both defense and trade. Fertile river valleys allowed the cultivation of cereals, grapes, and olives, while the Tiber itself provided a navigable route to the sea, connecting inland communities with Mediterranean commerce. Archaeological evidence suggests that by the late 8th century BCE, small settlements had coalesced into a proto-urban environment, incorporating structures, roads, and religious sites that reflect a complex social organization influenced by Latins, Sabines, and Etruscans. The foundation of Rome is famously tied to the legend of Romulus and Remus, sons of the Vestal Virgin Rhea Silvia and the god Mars. According to tradition, political turmoil in the region threatened the twins' survival. Their great uncle, fearing that they might one day overthrow him, abandoned them to the river. However, the she-wolf, Lupa, found and nursed them, a symbolic act representing divine favor and the resilience necessary to survive in a harsh world. The twins were later raised by the shepherd Faustulus and his wife, integrating human nurturing into the divine narrative. As they matured, Romulus and Remus resolved to establish a new city. A disagreement over its precise location led to Romulus killing Remus, an act that would echo in Roman identity as the first exercise of authority in the often harsh realities of leadership. Romulus's ascendancy marked the beginning of the monarchical period, which lasted approximately 244 years. During this era, 7 kings ruled Rome, each contributing to its social, political, and infrastructural development. Numa Pompilius, traditionally the second king, is credited with establishing religious rites and a calendar system that provided societal cohesion and a shared cultural framework. Tullus Hostilius, in contrast, focused on military expansion, consolidating Roman authority over neighboring Latin and Sabine communities. Ancus Marcius contributed significantly to infrastructure, building the port of Ostia at the Tiber's mouth, enhancing Rome's capacity for trade and naval activity. The 6th king, Servius Tullius, introduced a census that categorized citizens by wealth, which formalized military service obligations and established the foundational structure of Rome's early army. Daily life during this period was primarily agrarian. Most citizens engaged in farming, animal husbandry, and small-scale trade. Family and kinship structures were central to social organization. Clans or gentes maintained religious rituals, legal responsibilities, and property rights internally. Religion permeated every aspect of life. The Romans believed that proper observance of sacred rites ensured divine favor in the city's survival. Temples and altars were constructed on hills and strategic sites, serving as centers for both worship and civic gatherings. Festivals and sacrifices punctuated the agricultural calendar, linking human labor and cosmic order. Etruscan influence on early Rome was profound. The Etruscans, who inhabited the region north of Rome, contributed technological innovations in architecture, urban planning, and hydraulic engineering. The construction of the Cloaca Maxima, Rome's earliest sewage system, is attributed to Etruscan engineering. Additionally, the Romans adopted Etruscan religious practices, including augury, the interpretation of omens, and ritual ceremonies to honor gods and secure civic prosperity. This cross-cultural exchange created a hybrid society capable of adapting foreign practices to its own needs, providing a flexible foundation for political and military expansion. The political structure under the kings was a combination of military, religious, and civil authority vested in a single ruler. The king, Rex, commanded armies, presided over judicial matters, and led religious ceremonies. While this concentration of power allowed decisive leadership, it also generated tension within the aristocracy and between the monarchy and emerging social groups. The concept of imperium, or legal authority, was central to the king's role, encompassing both executive and military powers. Over time, the need to balance power among influential families became increasingly apparent. The last king, Tarquinius Superbus, known as Tarquin the Proud, exemplified the dangers of autocracy. His reign was characterized by oppression, disregard for Senate counsel, and ambitious public works projects designed more to glorify the monarchy than to serve the populace. The story of Lucretia, a noblewoman who was violated by the king's son and subsequently committed suicide, became a catalyst for rebellion. Outraged citizens, led by Lucius Junius Brutus and other prominent figures, expelled Tarquin and vowed never to accept monarchy again. In 509 BCE, the Roman Republic was officially established, instituting a system of annually elected magistrates, checks on executive authority, and collective decision-making through the Senate and popular assemblies. The establishment of the Republic initiated significant social and political transformations. Two consuls were elected annually to serve as executive leaders, supported by a council of elders, the Senate, which advised on legislation, foreign policy, and religious observances. Assemblies of citizens, including the Comitia Centuriata and Comitia Tributa, enabled broader participation in governance, though in practice patricians initially dominated political influence. Plebeians, however, gradually secured rights through persistent struggle, leading to the creation of the tribune of the plebs and codified laws that limited aristocratic power. These reforms, though modest initially, laid the groundwork for the Republic's remarkable longevity and adaptability. Economically, early Rome relied on subsistence agriculture, small-scale trade, and the exploitation of natural resources. Craftsmen, metalworkers, and traders facilitated the circulation of goods within the city and neighboring regions. Social stratification was emerging. Patricians held extensive land and influence, while plebeians occupied smaller holdings or worked as tenant farmers. Slavery existed but was less pervasive than in later periods, often derived from war captives. The combination of agrarian stability, religious cohesion, and emerging political institutions created a resilient framework that allowed Rome to endure early conflicts and internal pressures. Urban development in Rome progressed slowly but deliberately. Initial settlements on the Palatine Hill expanded to adjacent hills, forming interconnected neighborhoods. Streets and public spaces reflected functional and religious priorities, providing venues for markets, religious festivals, and civic gatherings. Fortifications were initially wooden, but gradually replaced with stone constructions, ensuring defense against neighboring tribes. This infrastructural evolution mirrored the city's social and political maturation, as communal identity was increasingly tied to physical space. By the 6th century BCE, Rome had become a complex, multi-ethnic urban center capable of sustaining growth and military expansion. Integration of Etruscan engineering, Latin traditions, and Sabine social structures created a flexible, adaptive society. The balance between religious observance, political authority, and military organization provided a stable foundation. These early centuries forged cultural norms and institutional frameworks that would influence Rome for centuries, shaping governance, warfare, religion, and daily life. The lessons of this period, resilience, adaptation, and the interplay of myth and reality, became central to Rome's self-identity and provided a blueprint for its later expansion across Italy and beyond.
Chapter 2: The Early Republic and the Struggle of Orders, 509 to 264 BCE. The expulsion of Tarquinius Superbus in 509 BCE marked not only the end of monarchy, but also the beginning of a new political experiment, the Roman Republic. The fledgling republic introduced a system that combined elements of aristocratic authority, popular representation, and collective oversight. Power was vested in two annually elected consuls who commanded armies, administered justice, and presided over public affairs. These consuls were supported by the Senate, an advisory council composed of former magistrates and elders from Rome's patrician families, whose experience provided continuity and institutional memory. In parallel, assemblies such as the Comitia Centuriata and Comitia Tributa allowed citizens to participate in voting on laws and electing officials, though voting power remained weighted towards wealthier classes. This delicate balance of power, however, masked underlying social tensions. Roman society was deeply stratified, divided primarily between patricians, the hereditary aristocracy, and plebeians, the common populace. Patricians controlled most land, wealth, and political influence, while plebeians, comprising farmers, artisans, and laborers, lacked formal access to political office and legal protection. These disparities prompted a sustained social struggle known historically as the conflict of the orders, which would dominate much of the early republic. The initial outcome of this conflict was the creation of the office of the tribune of the plebs around 494 BCE. Tribunes were elected representatives of the plebeians, endowed with the power to veto actions by magistrates or the Senate that threatened plebeian interests. This innovation marked a crucial step toward balancing power between social classes. Over time, the tribunes became pivotal figures in Rome's political landscape, defending the rights of ordinary citizens and introducing the idea that law could serve as a check on elite authority. Alongside political reforms, Rome's legal system began to take shape. The 12 Tables, codified around 449 BCE, were Rome's first attempt to establish a publicly accessible legal code. They addressed property rights, contracts, inheritance, debt, and criminal punishment, providing transparency and predictability in social interactions. Though primitive by later standards, the 12 Tables symbolize the Republic's commitment to law as a mechanism of governance rather than arbitrary rulership. They reflected both the influence of earlier Italic legal traditions and the Republic's growing emphasis on written law as a stabilizing force in society.
Military campaigns during this period were relentless but instructive. Rome fought numerous wars against neighboring Latin towns, Samnite tribes, and Etruscan cities. These campaigns tested the adaptability of Roman legions, the resilience of supply lines, and the political acumen of consuls. Rome's victories were often as much a result of strategic diplomacy and alliances as battlefield success. Defeated towns were incorporated, granting partial citizenship or military obligations, which created a loyal network of allies and reinforced Rome's authority without unnecessary destruction. Culturally, early Rome began forming a unique identity that blended Latin, Sabine, and Etruscan elements. Religious rituals reinforced civic cohesion, while festivals and public ceremonies integrated diverse communities. Oral tradition, legend, and history combined to provide a sense of continuity and legitimacy. Even as Rome expanded, these cultural frameworks ensured that new citizens, allies, and subjects could be incorporated into a shared Roman identity. By 264 BCE, the early republic had matured into a resilient political, social, and military system. It had survived the transition from monarchy, negotiated social conflict, codified laws, developed disciplined armies, and expanded territorial control. The stage was set for Rome's engagement with larger Mediterranean powers, particularly Carthage, and for the dramatic military and political transformations that would follow in the Punic Wars. The foundations laid during these formative centuries, law, military organization, social negotiation, and cultural integration, would sustain the Republic through its most turbulent periods and underpin Rome's enduring influence on European civilization. Chapter 3. Conquest of Italy and Military Innovations, 5th to 3rd centuries BCE. By the 5th century BCE, the Roman Republic had established itself as a resilient city-state capable of both defending its territory and projecting power into surrounding regions. Rome's expansion during this period was neither haphazard nor purely militaristic. It combined disciplined military campaigns, strategic diplomacy, and a sophisticated system of alliances. The Republic faced a patchwork of neighbors, Latin towns, Etruscan city-states, and Italic tribes such as the Samnites, who controlled central and southern Italy. Each confrontation challenged Rome's military tactics, administrative structures, and political cohesion, and yet the Republic adapted, laying the foundations for eventual dominance over the Italian peninsula. Military organization and the citizen-soldier model. The Roman army in this period was built on the principle of citizen soldiers. Adult male citizens, organized according to wealth and property, were obligated to serve in the legions. The wealthiest could afford heavy armor and shields, while the less affluent served in lighter roles. This system ensured a broad base of manpower and fostered a sense of civic duty intertwined with military service. Each legion was divided into centuries, with commanding officers selected from among the wealthier classes. Discipline, training, and loyalty were paramount. Soldiers were expected not only to fight, but also to construct fortifications, roads, and camps, which both supported military operations and enhanced Rome's infrastructure. Over time, the legions evolved from loosely organized militia groups into highly coordinated and flexible units. Tactics emphasized cohesion, adaptability, and combined arms strategies, with maniples and cohorts allowing maneuverability on varied terrain. Commanders learned to integrate intelligence, terrain analysis, and psychological warfare into campaigns, ensuring that the legions could face diverse enemies effectively. Military service became both a civic duty and a path to political influence, as successful generals could leverage victories into public prestige and offices. The term Pyrrhic victory originates from this period, describing a victory so costly that it undermines the winner's ability to exploit it. Rome learned from these encounters the importance of flexibility, logistics, and political cohesion, even in the face of superior enemy tactics. The eventual Roman victory in southern Italy solidified its reputation as an adaptable and determined military power. Colonization and infrastructure. Rome's expansion strategy was not solely martial. It included colonization and infrastructure development. Strategic colonies were established along key routes, serving both as defensive outposts and as centers for controlling newly conquered territory. Roads such as the Via Appia facilitated rapid troop movement and trade, integrating distant regions into a cohesive network. Fortified settlements provided security while spreading Roman culture, law, and language, reinforcing the Republic's authority. This combination of military conquest, settlement, and infrastructure became a defining feature of Roman expansion and ensured long-term control over conquered regions. Social and cultural impacts of expansion. Rome's conquest during this period had profound social and cultural effects. Integration of conquered peoples through treaties, partial citizenship, and military service created a sense of shared destiny, binding diverse communities to the Republic. Conquered elites often adopted Roman customs, participated in administration, and contributed to civic life. The influx of slaves from wars began to alter labor patterns, although slavery was not yet as central to the economy as it would become in later centuries. Cultural exchange with Etruscans, Greeks, and other Italic peoples enriched Roman art, religion, and technology, laying the foundations for the Hellenistic influences that would flourish in the subsequent era. Religion and civic identity. Religious observance remained a cornerstone of civic identity. Temples, rituals, and priestly colleges reinforced social cohesion and legitimized political authority. Augury, divination, and sacred ceremonies guided both military and civic decision-making, while festivals tied religious practice to the agricultural calendar. The blending of Latin, Sabine, and Etruscan religious traditions fostered a shared cultural framework that facilitated the integration of new communities. Religion and military service were intertwined, as divine favor was seen as essential for success in war and governance. Economic development and urban growth. The Republic's expansion spurred economic diversification. Conquered territories provided tribute, agricultural produce, and trade opportunities. Artisans, merchants, and farmers in newly integrated regions contributed to Rome's wealth and stability. Urban growth in Rome itself accelerated, with new districts, markets, and public buildings reflecting increased administrative complexity and economic activity. Land distribution remained central to social hierarchy, but the incorporation of allies and colonies created a broader network of resources and manpower. The stage for Mediterranean engagement. By the late 3rd century BCE, Rome had achieved hegemony over Italy, controlling both central and southern regions through a combination of military dominance, alliances, and colonization. The Republic's political institutions had matured, balancing aristocratic influence with popular participation, while the army had evolved into a disciplined, flexible force capable of facing diverse enemies. Social cohesion, reinforced through law, religion, and civic identity, enabled Rome to absorb external shocks and integrate new populations effectively. This period laid the foundation for Rome's entry into the broader Mediterranean stage. The Republic's experience in warfare, Diplomacy, infrastructure, and social integration provided the tools necessary to confront major powers such as Carthage and the Greek kingdoms. The lessons learned in Italy, flexibility in tactics, strategic alliances, and the integration of diverse populations would shape Rome's approach to empire building for centuries to come. By 264 BCE, Rome was poised not merely as a regional power, but as a rising force capable of engaging in conflicts that would determine the fate of the Mediterranean world. Wars with the Latin cities' early campaigns focused on consolidating control over Latium, the region surrounding Rome. Rome's approach was pragmatic. Defeated towns were offered alliances rather than outright destruction, allowing them to maintain local governance while providing military support to Rome. This strategy created a network of loyal allies, bound to Rome by treaties, obligations, and shared interests. Cities that resisted faced military defeat and incorporation, sometimes losing autonomy or paying tribute. By the early 4th century BCE, Rome had effectively subdued most of Latium, establishing both hegemony and a replicable model for expansion. Conflict with the Etruscans. The Etruscans, to the north, remained a formidable challenge. Early wars with Etruscan city-states involved both sieges and open battles. Rome's successes relied on discipline, numerical advantage, and the ability to form strategic alliances with other Italic peoples. These conflicts also spurred innovations in fortification construction, road building, and logistical coordination, as maintaining supply lines and troop movements became critical for sustained campaigns. Victories over Etruscan cities not only expanded Rome's territory, but also provided access to new resources, including metals, artisans, and trade networks that enhanced the city's economic and military capacity. The Samnite Wars and the battle for central Italy. The Samnites, a confederation of hill tribes in central Italy, presented a more complex and sustained challenge. Between 343 and 290 BCE, Rome engaged in three major Samnite wars. The terrain was difficult, with mountainous regions that favored defensive tactics and guerrilla-style ambushes. Rome's response involved tactical innovation, including the development of manipular formations, which allowed legions to operate in smaller, flexible units capable of navigating hills and valleys. These adaptations were crucial for overcoming the Samnites' mobility and knowledge of the terrain. The Samnite Wars also illustrated Rome's diplomatic acumen. The Republic used treaties, temporary alliances, and the granting of partial citizenship to co-opt potential enemies. This approach minimized prolonged resistance and integrated conquered communities into Rome's socio-political structure. By the conclusion of these wars, Rome had established dominance over central Italy, creating a network of allied towns and colonies that could provide troops, supplies, and loyalty in future conflicts. Pyrrhus of Epirus and the Lessons of Strategy. In the early 3rd century BCE, Rome faced one of its most dramatic military challenges, the invasion of Pyrrhus of Epirus. Pyrrhus, a Greek general invited by Greek colonies in southern Italy to defend them against Roman expansion, brought with him professional soldiers, phalanxes, and war elephants. His victories at Heraclea, 280 BCE, and Asculum, 279 BCE, were costly for both sides. The Romans' capacity to absorb losses, reorganize armies, and continue fighting despite setbacks illustrated a key feature of Roman resilience, to combine military endurance with strategic patience. Chapter 4. The Punic Wars, 264 to 146 BCE. Rome's struggle with Carthage defined its rise as a Mediterranean power. The First Punic War, 264 to 241 BCE, gave Rome control of Sicily, marking its first overseas province. In the Second Punic War, 218 to 201 BCE, Hannibal's daring invasion of Italy brought Rome to the brink of defeat, but Scipio Africanus's victory at Zama secured Roman supremacy. The Third Punic War, 149 to 146 BCE, ended with Carthage's destruction, leaving Rome the unrivaled master of the Western Mediterranean. These wars also transformed Roman society. Military expansion enriched elites, weakened small farmers, and made conquest a central feature of Roman politics. Chapter 5. Expansion and Social Strains, 2nd century BCE. The rapid conquest of Greece, Asia Minor, and Spain brought immense wealth and slaves, but also destabilized the republic. Large estates, latifundia, displaced independent farmers, pushing many into poverty and swelling the urban poor. The Gracchi brothers tried to reform land distribution and strengthen citizen rights, but both were killed, setting a precedent for political violence. Social inequality deepened, while generals gained power by promising land and spoils to their soldiers. Rome was becoming a military state in practice, even as republican institutions survived in name. Chapter 6. Crisis of the Republic and the Rise of Strongmen. 1st century BCE. The late Republic was dominated by civil wars and ambitious generals. Marius reformed the army, creating legions loyal to commanders rather than the Senate. Sulla used his troops to seize Rome and ruled as dictator, showing how military force now outweighed law. After decades of unrest, Julius Caesar emerged as the dominant figure. His conquest of Gaul gave him unmatched prestige, and in 49 BCE, he crossed the Rubicon, defeating Pompey and taking power. His assassination in 44 BCE plunged Rome into further wars, ending only when Octavian, Augustus, defeated Antony and Cleopatra in 31 BCE, paving the way for monarchy. Chapter 7. Augustus and the Principate, 27 BCE to 14 CE. After decades of civil war, Octavian, Julius Caesar's adopted son, defeated Mark Antony and Cleopatra at Actium in 31 BCE. In 27 BCE, he became Augustus, presenting himself as the restorer of the Republic, while in reality creating a monarchy disguised by republican traditions. Augustus carefully balanced appearances. The Senate and magistrates remained, but true power lay in his hands. He held tribunician and proconsular authority, controlling both government and the military. By avoiding the title of king, he made his rule acceptable to Romans who valued tradition. His greatest achievement was stabilizing the army. He reduced the legions, stationed them on the frontiers, introduced fixed service terms, and funded veterans' pensions through a special military treasury. The new Praetorian Guard protected the emperor, ensuring loyalty at the heart of Rome. In the provinces, Augustus divided territories between the Senate and himself, keeping strategic military provinces under his direct control. He reformed taxation, carried out censuses, and reduced corruption. These measures strengthened imperial authority while maintaining local elites' cooperation. Economically, Augustus secured Rome's grain supply, improved trade, and stabilized coinage. His ambitious building program transformed Rome into a monumental capital, symbolized by the Ara Pacis and his famous boast of leaving a city of marble. Chapter 8. The Julio-Claudian and Flavian dynasties, 14 to 96 CE. After Augustus, power passed to his family, the Julio-Claudians. Tiberius ruled cautiously, but faced growing suspicion and isolation. Caligula, remembered for cruelty and extravagance, shocked elites with erratic behavior. Claudius, despite being underestimated, proved capable. He expanded Rome into Britain and improved administration. Nero, infamous for tyranny, artistic pretensions, and persecution of Christians, lost support and was overthrown in 68 CE, plunging Rome into civil war. The year of the four emperors, 69 CE, ended with Vespasian's victory. He founded the Flavian dynasty, restoring order after chaos. Vespasian strengthened finances, integrated provincial elites, and began construction of the Colosseum. His son Titus completed the amphitheater and dealt with crises like the eruption of Vesuvius in 79 CE in a major fire in Rome. Domitian ruled with increasing autocracy, expanding frontiers but alienating the Senate, and was assassinated in 96 CE. Despite turbulence, these dynasties consolidated the imperial system. Rome expanded territorially, invested in monumental architecture, and developed stronger provincial administration. The age revealed both the dangers of personal rule and the resilience of the imperial structure created by Augustus. Choice Chapter 9. The Pax Romana, 27 BCE to 180 CE. The Pax Romana, or Roman peace, was a golden era of stability and prosperity lasting nearly 2 centuries. Emperors from Augustus to Marcus Aurelius maintained strong central authority, professional armies, and secure frontiers. Economy and trade flourished. Grain from Egypt, wine and oil from Spain, and luxury goods from the East supplied Rome and its provinces. A network of roads, aqueducts, and harbors integrated the empire. Coinage stabilized commerce, while cities across Europe, Africa, and Asia adopted Roman architecture, law, and culture. Society remained hierarchical. Senators and equestrians held wealth and power, while the urban poor and slaves formed the majority. Yet public baths, theaters, and games gave citizens shared experiences. Roman law advanced, and citizenship gradually expanded, uniting diverse peoples under one identity. Culturally, the period produced enduring achievements. Monumental buildings like the Colosseum, great writers such as Virgil, Livy, and Seneca, and innovations in art and engineering. Religion blended Roman traditions with the imperial cult, reinforcing loyalty to emperor and state. Though not without challenges, the Pax Romana created the conditions for Rome's greatest strength and became the model of imperial peace for centuries to come. Chapter 10. The Crisis of the Third Century, 235 to 284 CE. After the Pax Romana, the empire entered deep crisis. From 235 CE, emperors rose and fell rapidly, often elevated and killed by their own troops. Civil wars weakened central authority, while external enemies pressed hard. Germanic tribes invaded along the Rhine and Danube, and the Sasanian Persians captured Roman territory in the east. Economic breakdown worsened instability. Endless wars drained finances. Coinage was debased and inflation soared. Trade routes collapsed, cities shrank, and rural populations sought protection from powerful landlords. Heavy taxation and food shortages deepened suffering. Society turned increasingly to religion for comfort, with mystery cults and new spiritual movements spreading. At the same time, the imperial cult remained a tool of loyalty. Despite near collapse, the empire survived. The soldier emperor Aurelian reunited breakaway regions in the 270s, while Diocletian, from 284 CE, introduced major reforms, dividing the empire into the Tetrarchy, reorganizing provinces, and strengthening the army. His measures restored order, but also transformed Rome into a more centralized, bureaucratic, and militarized state. The crisis of the third century marked the end of Rome's classical golden age. From its turmoil emerged a different empire, harsher but more resilient, shaping the course of late antiquity.